The summer sun spilled across the rolling fields of Kansas, painting the wheat in strokes of gold. A soft breeze carried the scent of earth and grass, and in the midst of it all stood Claire Dalton, a woman the townsfolk whispered about but never truly knew. She was big-boned, her cheeks round, her frame heavy, and the boys in town had mocked her since childhood, calling her Fat Claire's or Cowgirl. She had grown up with those words stinging her ears, sinking into her skin like splinters, but she learned to carry herself with a quiet dignity. She ran the farm her parents had left her, a sprawling 150 acres of corn, wheat, and cattle. It was a solitary life, but not a lonely one, for the land was her heartbeat, her sanctuary, her inheritance. Yet what no one in town knew, not the mocking teenagers, not the gossiping adults, not even the bullies who'd grown older but no kinder, was that Claire carried a past that would have silenced every insult and stilled every cruel laugh. Beneath her humble denim overalls and mud-stained boots was a woman forged in steel and fire, trained by some of the world's toughest warriors. Before she was Fat Claire the farm girl, she had been Sergeant Claire Dalton, a Green Beret sniper, protector of men who never forgot her name. It all began on a morning that seemed like any other. Claire was out by the barn, hauling bales of hay with ease, her breath steady, her movements deliberate. At 32, her strength was something no one questioned, though they often misjudged the source. Her body was heavy, yes, but inside that frame lived muscle honed through years of crawling through mud, sprinting under fire, and carrying gear twice her size across foreign battlefields. She had retired early after an injury and returned home, choosing the quiet of the farm over the chaos of war. But peace was fragile. That morning, the distant roar of pickup trucks broke the stillness. She knew the sound well. It wasn't the rumble of neighbors coming to lend a hand. It was the rowdy laughter of boys who had never grown into men, the kind who carried beer cans in the morning and trouble in the afternoon. They rolled in, kicking up dust, 4 of them crammed into the back of a rusty Ford. Local boys, the same ones who had jeered at her in high school and now, a decade later, still saw her land as a playground. They had been coming more often lately, sneaking in at night, leaving trash in her fields, sometimes spooking her cattle. Today, though, they weren't hiding. They parked right in front of her barn, jumped out, and started whooping and laughing, throwing empty cans into her pasture. "Hey, cowgirl," one of them shouted, a tall, lanky man with a baseball cap turned backward. His name was Rick, and he had been the loudest bully in high school, the kind who measured his worth in how small he could make others feel. "What's the farm special today? Bacon? Oh wait, you already ate it." The boys erupted in laughter, slapping each other. Fresh, not a tired insult Claire had heard 1,000 times. Claire set down the bale she was carrying, her movement slow and calm. She didn't answer. Years of military training had taught her that silence was a weapon stronger than words. But inside, she felt the sting, not for herself anymore, but for the ugliness of a world where grown men still thought cruelty was strength. She wiped her brow, adjusted her gloves, and looked at them steadily. Rick sneered. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you're too busy stuffing your face with pies?" More laughter. The second boy, a stockier one named Joey, picked up a stone and hurled it toward her barn. It clanged against the metal siding, startling a calf inside. Claire's eyes narrowed. She had endured their nonsense long enough, but she would not let them harm her animals or her land. She stepped forward, her boots crunching against the gravel. "You boys had your fun," she said evenly, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding respect. "Now get off my property." The sudden firmness in her tone startled them. For a moment, there was silence. Then Rick laughed again, though it rang hollow. "Look at you, trying to sound tough. You're just a fat farm girl. What are you gonna do? Sit on us?" The boys doubled over in laughter again, but Claire did not flinch. Instead, she glanced at the ridge of the barn, then at the tall fence post standing 100 yards away. Her mind was calculating, not with anger, but with precision, the kind of focus drilled into her during missions where hesitation meant death. She picked up a rock the size of her palm, weighed it in her hand, then flicked her wrist. The rock flew in a perfect arc, striking the fence post dead center with a sharp crack. The boys' laughter stopped abruptly. Rick blinked. What the hell? Claire took another step forward, her gaze steady. I said. Get off. My property. There was something in her voice this time, a chill, a command, a force that made even Joey hesitate. The boys shuffled, muttered, then climbed back into their truck, spitting out half-hearted insults as they drove away. Dust rose behind them, but their laughter didn't return. Claire stood still, watching until they were gone, then exhaled slowly. She hated confrontation, not because she couldn't win it, but because it always reminded her of darker days when her skills weren't used to protect a farm, but to protect lives in deserts half a world away. She turned back to her chores, determined not to let the encounter sour her day. But life has a way of twisting paths when least expected. That night, a storm rolled in. Lightning split the sky, and rain poured in heavy sheets. Around midnight, Claire heard the panicked cries of her cattle. She grabbed her lantern and rushed to the pasture, her boots sinking into mud. What she found made her heart sink. The same boys had returned. This time emboldened by Drink and Angie. At being dismissed, they had cut the fence, letting several cattle loose, and were trying to chase them with shouts and thrown bottles. The animals were terrified, slipping in the wet grass, one calf nearly breaking its leg. Enough! Claire's voice thundered across the field. The boys froze, the rain plastering their hair to their heads. Rick turned, smirking through the storm. We're just having fun, cowgirl. What's the matter, can't handle it? Claire felt a fire ignite in her chest. Not of rage, but of purpose. She walked forward, every step steady despite the mud, her lantern casting shadows on her determined face. When she spoke again, it wasn't just her voice, it was the voice of every drill sergeant who had ever barked orders, every commander who had ever trusted her, every soldier who had ever depended on her cover fire. You will leave. Now. Joey scoffed, but before he could retort, Claire reached into her jacket and pulled something small. Her old Green Beret challenge coin, the kind carried by elite soldiers. She flipped it between her fingers with the same ease she once handled a rifle. In the lantern light, the coin glinted, unmistakable to anyone who had ever known military men. Rick's smirk faltered. His older brother had served. He knew what that coin meant. You were military, he stammered. Claire's gaze never wavered. Green Beret. Sniper. The boys exchanged nervous glances, their bravado slipping. The storm howled around them, but the only sound Claire heard was their quiet shuffle backward. Rick opened his mouth, then shut it again, the weight of her words silencing him in a way no insult ever could. Finally, they turned and left, stumbling back into the night. But the story didn't end there. Days later, Rick showed up at her farm again, but this time, he was alone, no laughter, no insults. His hat was in his hands, his eyes downcast. I came to say sorry, he muttered. We shouldn't have messed with you. I didn't know. Claire studied him for a long moment. She could have turned him away. She could have unleashed all the bitterness stored from years of ridicule. But instead, she remembered something one of her commanders had told her long ago: the strongest weapon a soldier carries isn't in their hands. It's in their heart. So she nodded. Apology accepted. But actions speak louder than words. If you want to make it right, there's always work to be done on a farm. Rick blinked, surprised. But the next morning, he showed up again. This time, he helped mend the broken fence. Later, Joey came too. Slowly, awkwardly, the others followed. What began as an attempt to make amends became something greater. They learned to respect the land, to value the sweat it took to keep it alive. They began to see Claire not as fat farm girl, but as a woman of strength, resilience, and compassion. By the end of summer, the same boys who once mocked her were sitting at her kitchen table, eating cornbread and listening.